Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're jumping into something huge, the foundational blueprint of the entire Bible. We're talking about the first 11 chapters of Genesis. And these aren't just ancient stories. Think of them more like the architectural plans for a narrative that spans thousands of years.
So to really wrap our heads around this, let's use a powerful analogy that our sources point to. Let's imagine God as a master architect, and these first few chapters are him laying this incredible foundation for a massive, world-spanning construction project. Every single event we're going to look at is a crucial step in the build.
All right, so here's our plan for today. We'll start with the perfect blueprint. Then we'll see how the first cracks start to show up in the foundation. We're going to look at a pretty drastic project reset, and then finally, a defiant act of rebellion that really changes the course of everything and sets the stage for a dramatic rescue mission.
Okay, let's get into it. The foundation. See, these first 11 chapters, they're not just a random collection of stories. They're 4 foundational events, historical events, that establish the core problems and, importantly, the core promises for the entire biblical story that's about to unfold.
A really great way to think about it is like a camera lens. This first section is filmed with a wide-angle lens, right? It's covering the universal story of, well, everyone. It sets up the big picture problem. But then, starting in chapter 12, the camera zooms way in for a close-up on one specific family, and that's where God begins this very personal plan to fix the broken project.
Okay, so any great project has to start with a perfect plan. The architect's very first move is to pour this flawless foundation, bringing incredible order and just brilliant design out of what the original Hebrew text calls tohu wabohu, which basically means a formless, empty chaos. Now, look at this. There's a super clear, methodical pattern here. It's not random at all. On the first 3 days, you see the architect forming the realms, the environments. Then, on the next 3 days, he fills those exact same realms with inhabitants. It's just a beautiful picture of perfect logic and divine order.
And the core message here is that this isn't just about making things, it's about making things right. The whole process is structured, it's deliberate, and it really establishes God as the pre-existent designer behind everything.
And here's a really crucial point. This principle of fixed boundaries. It's like an architect designing a stove specifically for the kitchen and a bed specifically for the bedroom. They're distinct by design, right? This just highlights that everything, including you and me, was created with a unique identity and purpose inside the architect's grand design.
So, the foundation is complete. The place is flawless. But a really critical structural crack is about to be introduced by the project's very first inhabitants, and it threatens the integrity of the whole structure. You see, the architect placed humanity in this garden called Eden, and that name is so important. The word literally means enjoyment and delight. It was a world with this perfect, open relationship between the creator and the created.
I mean, it seems like the perfect setup, right? A world literally designed for joy and connection. So, what could possibly go wrong? What could cause a crack in such a perfect foundation?
Well, the thing is, the problem wasn't really about a piece of fruit. The real issue, the core issue, was this desire to grab the blueprints for themselves, a desire to be like God. It was humanity deciding, you know what, we're going to set our own rules for right and wrong. And isn't that a pattern we still see? That temptation to be our own architect, to define our own truth, which always ends up rupturing our relationship with the true architect. And wow, that single crack spread with terrifying speed. The consequences weren't isolated at all. It led almost immediately from the very first sin to the very first murder, introducing conflict and death and separation into God's perfect world. The project was now officially compromised.
So with the foundation now deeply compromised and this corruption spreading like a cancer through every part of the project, the architect performs a drastic, large-scale reset, a massive washout to clear away all the decay that was threatening to tear the whole thing down from the inside.
This event shows us 2 really critical sides of the architect's character. On one hand, he is a God of holy judgment who has to deal with the rebellion that's wrecking his project. But on the other hand, he's a God of faithful grace, providing a very specific escape plan, the Ark, for the one man and his family who were still trying to follow the original blueprint.
And this is so important. Right after this dramatic reset, the architect establishes a covenant, a binding promise, symbolized by the rainbow. It's this powerful statement of his faithfulness. He's pretty much saying, look, despite humanity's failure, my commitment to my project is not going anywhere.
Now you'd think, right, after a complete project reset of that magnitude, the survivors would stick to the original blueprint. But no. Our final foundational event shows humanity once again grabbing their own tools to build something totally different, in direct defiance of the architect's plan.
Okay, now remember the architect's original instruction? It was simple. Spread out, be fruitful, and fill the earth. The idea was to collaborate with him in managing all of his creation.
But humanity had a very different three-step plan. Their goal was the exact opposite of God's command. They wanted to consolidate their power all in one place. Their method was to build this huge tower, a symbol of their own achievement. And their motive? It was pure self-glorification, to make a name for ourselves, completely independent of the architect.
So the architect steps in, but he doesn't halt this unauthorized project with destruction. Instead, he just confuses their communication. He separates the work crews by language, which then naturally forces them to scatter all over the earth, which, ironically, accomplishes the very command they were rebelling against in the first place.
So, now that we've walked through these four foundational events, creation, the fall, the flood, and Babel, what's the big takeaway from this whole foundation phase of the project? What's the pattern we're supposed to see here?
Well, when you lay them all out like this, a really powerful recurring cycle just pops out. Step 1. God establishes divine order. Step 2. That perfect order is met with human rebellion. Step 3. That rebellion brings about judgment. But, and this is the most important part, judgment is always followed by this glimmer of hope and a promise for the future.
So when you get right down to it, Genesis 1 through 11 is not just a prequel, no, it is the essential foundation that explains why the rest of the Bible is even necessary. It sets up the central conflict, a perfect creation messed up by human rebellion, and a faithful creator who is absolutely determined to see his project through to the end.
And this leaves us with this final, really provocative thought. Okay, so the project is in total disarray. The people are scattered, they're divided. The grand universal plan, it seems like it's failed. So what is the architect going to do next? He's going to change tactics. He's going to zoom the camera in from that wide-angle view of everyone to a tight close-up on just one man, Abraham. And that is where the next phase of construction begins.